Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you hear me
How
okay?
I hear you great. Yeah, it
All
sounds
right,
great.
great.
How's
Good.
how's life been?
Life's been okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And
All things considered, yeah.
that's correct. Yeah, yeah,
Good.
yeah. I feel like I can't figure out how, oh, sorry, there it is. Okay. I was like, how the fuck do you even rename yourself? Okay. Um, yeah, all the fucking requisite
Hmm.
hemming and hawing that goes along with that question these days. But in my little corner of the universe or whatever, Brooklyn, my little life with my little family and
Yeah,
my little music, and I mean, I'm everything in that part of things is great. And then we live in a broader context, and that's a little nutty, but
sure.
or a lot
Trying, yeah.
nutty, but would have been sweet if we were talking between games 5 and 6 of the Knicks and
Uh-huh.
Thunder, but we'll get
I
to
know.
that. I don't know that we would have gotten a game 5
I
if the
tried to
Knicks
time it
did.
right, man. I
You
tried
did
to
all
time
you
it
could.
perfectly.
Listen, the gods of basketball wanted something different, but we'll get to all that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool, man. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. It's great to talk.
Thanks for your patience. Thanks for
Oh, of
having
course.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you got plenty going on. I think you're always kind of on the road, right?
It's funny that I guess that is true, but it's funny because I have a 9-year-old daughter
Right.
and I definitely tore like 30% as much as I did before she was born. Maybe, I
Sure.
don't know. I think it was a little different pre-COVID. Maybe like when we put a record out in 2016 and I feel like it
Hmm.
was still like in the ballpark. But before I had a kid, it was like 9 years,
Sure.
2006 to 15, where I was kind of on tour, like, more than I wasn't is
Yeah.
really what it felt like. And then, from when I started touring to that point, probably 2001 to 5 or 6, it was like taking
Hmm.
up more and more time. So it's funny now, I feel like if I'm away I think what happens now is I go away a bunch, but for smaller, it's like
Exactly.
long weekends and shit like
Sure.
that. It's just so happened that I feel like every time we've tried to do this, it's been like exactly well, there was also just a long swath where I just dropped the thread completely.
Yeah, that's
But
that's how it goes, man. I know how it goes.
yeah,
It's all good.
life intervenes. But yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I like to start, talking music first before we get into the basketball side of things. Um, I'd love
I,
to, well, tip off question I'd love to know is I'm curious what you're listening to.
dude, I feel like I'm going to stop moving the thing now. I feel like I'm trying to make sure that you can hear me okay.
It's
I'll
great.
stop
Yeah.
now. Okay. I have become such a I don't know if it's a cliche. I'm 45 and I've been like playing in a music obsessed person since like a consciousness,
Right.
like his for earliest memories are literally like of my mom playing like fucking Joni Mitchell in the
Yeah.
kitchen, like, music everywhere and falling in love and been in bands since I was 14. And at 45, I am like the most glacial to music guy. It's like the
Hmm.
slowest I've ever been and the least like immersed, I think, and
Sure.
like um but no, I was thinking about this recently because not only in advance of talking to you, but I feel like I was having a conversation with somebody on the tour I was just on. Stuff recently, like newer things that have really connected to me. I really
Whatever,
like,
whatever you're jamming with.
well,
Yeah.
I would like to try to start there, just an acknowledgement of, I make music sometimes with a songwriter and singer named Caroline Glazer,
Okay.
plays under the name Brother Bird,
Hmm.
who you should talk to her sometime. She's a ball
I,
head for sure.
that's great to know. I literally
Uh,
just put one of her songs on the last playlist we did.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
will. What we can. I should connect those dots because
Yeah.
I've been on tour with her, where after shows we've been. In 2023, we were like in hotels around the
Okay.
American Midwest and Northeast, binging the NBA
Oh
playoffs.
yeah.
And like we like send each other like fucking memes of like funny shit that like Jokic, the Joker says at fucking
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway. But she plays on as Brother Bird.
Uh-huh.
She's appeared on I have this other group Bad Books. She
Hmm.
was featured on our most recent. We like did a reimagining of our second record, and she sang all over that. And she's been like a live member of my goddamn band thing
Yeah.
here and there. Her records are I would recommend her to everybody. She's one of those people that I'm just like, It'll be an honor to be opening for her. And
Hmm.
if you told me in 6 months, I'd believe it. If you told me in five,
Totally.
whenever. But she's and also, how people find things and whether or not they do is above my pay grade. But her music, I can't really see people listening to it and not liking it unless you
Right.
just like don't like well-written songs sung by an incredible
Yeah.
vocalist.
That's what I was surprised when I first heard it because it's like I can name like five or six artists at least who are like she's in the ballpark of this, and they're all very popular at least right now. So like I can't imagine why
Totally.
she's not.
And that's also a that's like a broader conversation
That's
maybe
true.
about like what that even means. Like
Sure.
another person I would recommend I was thinking about really recently is Jessica Lee Mayfield,
Mm.
and she's so fucking good. And her, I feel like I saw a conversation with her recently where she was talking about how her fans will often say to her like, I wish there were more people at this show. Like I wish you
Oh,
were. And she was kind of saying, like, I'm good,
yeah.
like that's okay. And I can kind of identify with that conversation actually. It's meant as a affirming thing.
Hmm.
And it's sweet, but you're actually like, it's okay. Like don't
Yeah.
worry about that. You're here. But anyway, she's great. All her stuff,
Awesome.
highly recommended. Squirrel Flower on Polyvinyl
She's
Records.
Chicagoan. Yeah.
Yeah,
Ella's amazing.
Ella's great. And that's somebody that like maybe 7 years ago, I played a show. I think she was living for a brief period of time. Actually, I don't know if Ella uses she or they pronouns, so I'll say Ella. Ella was
That's
living
good call.
in maybe in New England for a little while,
Okay.
like for school, something, maybe school or work. Anyway, and they opened a show in Burlington, Vermont, and it was one of the few times in my very long playing shows in clubs where like the person that was opening was sound checking, and
Hmm.
literally it was one of those things you're like setting up the merch or something and you like stop and you're just like, oh, that person's gonna be like a tour,
Right.
like a national touring. If like when this is in no, I've been the local band many times, so this is not meant as a diss to the local band. But when the local band like stops you in your tracks, it's very rare that that's happened, and it's usually
Uh-huh.
ended up being like that person ended up being like an international touring
Right.
artist, and
Yeah.
that's happening with Ella. So those are three people. And it's so funny because there was somebody else recently that I was like, I'm sure we'll finish this conversation. I'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, I meant to say. Um, but off the top of my head, I'll just say those three for right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Jessica Lee Mayfield's been around forever, but that's
For sure.
this. And like, literally on Father's Day, like my partner and my daughter, we were here and it was like, it was like, what's predictable? Like, it was like, oh, it's Father's Day. Well, I'll make breakfast. And my
Hmm.
daughter made all these, like, like a fucking tic-tac-toe board with like sun and the moon chips that you play tic-tac-toe with, and she
Oh,
painted it.
nice.
And my partner made like this expansive breakfast, and they were like, let's put on some music. And it was like, oh, it's Father's Day. I guess let's put on Elliott Smith. And I was like, well, I'm certainly not going to say no.
Sure.
It's
It's like
yeah,
you don't have to, but
yeah, but it's fine with me. And Matthew Sweet, lately,
oh
that
yeah.
100% Fun record, which I grew up with, that like it's like his most, he feeds, I feel like, the kind of like grunge thing
Hmm.
through his like power pop brain on
Yeah.
that record. And what comes out is like the most, the closest thing to like if Matthew Sweet, it's either if Matthew Sweet made In Utero or if
Yeah.
Steve Albini recorded Matthew Sweet. That's what that sounds like to me.
I
It's like,
I always
yeah.
found that there was like some synergies between Matthew Sweet and Jeff Buckley. It's just like Jeff Buckley was just a little on the sadder side, and Matthew Sweet is a little more on the poppier, happier side.
And they both had, I feel like also Jeff Buckley is like, there's like a Zeppelin thing going on
Hmm.
with Jeff Buckley. And I feel
It's
like
the
with Matt,
vocals for sure. Yeah.
yeah, and some of those like vaguely like Eastern sounding modalities that's happening
Mm-hmm.
there. I feel like and obviously Jeff Buckley was like, I have to cop to this. I had Grace, I had the mystery white boy
Yeah.
thing too. I feel like if you were grown, like I said, I'm 45. I feel like you had to have those.
Right.
I will admit that like he is someone I'm like, wow, what a great singer than I am like. wow, what an amazing songwriter. That's just
Sure.
me. I don't
Okay.
feel like I get whereas I think someone like Matthew Sweet, I'm like, what a songwriter. It's almost
Yeah.
like there's something going on arrangement wise, whereas I feel like Jeff Buckley was like watching like a peacock like escape from
Yeah.
its cage at the zoo. You know what I mean? When you like go to a
Sure.
zoo and the peacocks are like allowed to walk around on the path and you're like, whoa, that's a fucking
Yep.
peacock. Um, but and there's something beautiful about it, but also yeah, I don't know the end of that tortured metaphor, but yeah.
What's funny with Jeff Buckley is that it's kind of like a weird way to think about this, but like, sometimes you can't help but think like what would they be doing like if they were still around?
Well,
And I'm
AI can
like,
tell you.
oh, yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm like, honestly, I bet you Jeff Buckley would have been a judge on American Idol.
It's amazing. Yeah, like because he could have had a path where he is
Right.
thought of by those people. He might have been on The
Absolutely.
Voice or
Right.
something. Yeah, it's funny.
People do his version of this of Hallelujah on the show like all the time, you
With
know?
whether they even know it,
I
that
know.
whether they even know that, rather. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's so true. I mean, I wonder how many people that do that song in any number of contexts even know like who wrote it.
They probably think he's the original, yeah.
Yeah, or if they've ever even heard. It's funny, like I don't know when it was that I heard Leonard Cohen's actual recorded version for the first
Uh-huh.
time, but it wasn't like 1994. It was
No,
probably like
no.
15 years ago, and I was like, wow, this I
Yeah.
kind of get it. Like this sounds ridiculous,
Yeah.
but the song, there's that great story where he gives that record, what was it called? Various Positions or something, and it wasn't
Hmm.
released in America. It was only released in Europe
It's
because he
wild.
was on whatever Clive Davis's label was and he brought in the record with Hallelujah on it. It becomes like the standard in
Hmm.
pop music of the last, I don't know, 30 years. It's like I don't know, the most recorded, covered,
It's
performed
one of the most covered songs I think of
of
all
all
time.
time.
Yeah.
And Clive Davis listened to it and said, you know, Leonard, we know you're great, but we just don't know if you're any good. Which is funny because there's another great quote about Hallelujah and Jeff Buckley, which is, I think, Clive Davis brings John Bon Jovi to see him play at the Saint in Asbury Park, which is a shithole. I've played it
Sure.
before, played at it before, and he plays it. He watches him play and he plays his set. And at the end, he closes with Hallelujah. And then Clive Davis turns to John Bon Jovi and says, well, what did you think? And he says, like, I think he's an incredible singer. I don't really think I don't really know if I think there are very many like songs there. And Clive Davis, he says, except for that last one. And
Hmm.
Clive Davis goes, that's actually a Leonard Cohen song. And then John Bon Jovi goes, well, then I guess there aren't any songs there. Which is John Bon Jovi's take. You know, what does that
Sure.
mean? But it's a good line. It's a good
Yeah,
line.
absolutely. Uh,
Anyway, I'm certain there's other music I'm gonna like maybe as we go
those are all
through
great
this.
picks though, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And then, like if you can I guess dig a little deeper on this, I have an ongoing playlist that I do where I have a recommendation from every guest and they add to the playlist. So you don't get to know what the song before was. It could be a complete reversal, but
Oh, that's
that's kind of
cool.
kind of the fun of it. So if you have a song you want to add,
Yeah, I'm gonna say I'm gonna say Sick of Myself by Matthew Sweet.
there you go.
It's
Sweet.
been in my head for like 6 months, but
Nice.
so I guess
Have
we
you
have to say that.
you ever heard of Music League?
No.
It's kind of like it's kind of like fantasy sports for like playlists, and
Hmm.
you have a group of friends and you get like a prompt every week or whatever,
Okay.
and you pick a song to add, and you blind vote on like what songs you like out of the playlist, and
Oh,
you
that's
attribute
fun.
points. So the one I had recently was killer guitar solos, and I wanted to pick really bad girlfriend by Matthew Sweet because it is a killer guitar solo.
That's a killer guitar solo. Um, what did you pick something different?
I picked a Jeff Beck song
Oh, well,
because
listen,
he's
that's
got
what he's
nothing
there
short
for.
of,
That's what
yeah,
he's
he's
there
got
for. Yeah,
any
yeah.
song of his.
You're not going to necessarily pick a Jeff Beck song if it's like most pithy, concise,
You're right.
powerful lyric. Um, no, that's I think that's a cool conceit, and I hope you got adequately
Sure.
upvoted.
Yeah, I did all right.
That's good.
So I guess that's a good transition, talking about lyrically. Um, your music, I feel like you are kind of you have like two worlds where like you have some really personal stuff, and then you also dive into some more political. That's a kind of a bit at your core of the
Yeah.
songwriting.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like how when did you realize you wanted to like write songs like that? Because a lot of people just want to avoid it.
That's actually a really good way to ask that question. I, because it's funny, sometimes I recognize we're literally, this is what this is. You're on a
Yeah.
podcast, you talk. Sometimes I feel like um, I'm not great about talking about my songs in the way in the sense that like I think there are other songwriters who are really good at being like this is exactly what I meant, this is why I said it, this
Hmm.
is what, and I've always been like I've kind of always, it's like when I hear actors start to talk about the process,
Yeah.
my brain just immediately shuts off. I'm just like, I
Sure.
can't fucking abide this, you know? And sometimes when a songwriter's like, and this is what this means, and this is, I'm like, why are you telling us that? Like, let us
Yeah.
have our own. But about, it's funny. I think this, the reason for any of that useless sub pretext is this. So my entry point with like my own songwriting, I was, you know, like I said, I grew up in Brooklyn, pretty big family. My dad was older than my mom. He was married once before, and so I had four elder half siblings, but I was raised like they
Sure.
were. And then my younger brother Dan, who's a basketball journalist for Yahoo, he wrote for The
Oh.
Ringer forever, and now he writes for Yahoo. Dan and I, he's the younger one. We're like, you know, full, whatever the hell you would say, brothers. Um, but music was everywhere. My elder siblings, it was like, you know, whatever rock music was around in the 80s and some like pop music. And I think that my sister's probably the first place I ever heard like The Cure, you know,
Hmm.
maybe even like The Replacements probably at some point.
Sure.
But my mom, it was the Beatles and Dylan and Joni Mitchell and James Taylor and all these people and
Yeah.
songs and Dylan, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, and I remember like crazy, it's funny, like being at like day camp in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and like being, it was a rainy day, so we had to do stuff inside, and one of the counselors played like Blowing in the Wind.
Wild.
I remember being like, what, like just hearing it and kind of feeling like songs like Blowing in the Wind, like I just covered This Land Is Your Land for our Patreon. They
Yeah.
vote for covers. They're not songs, they're like trees. It's like they
Yeah.
just were there forever. They like grew. So I'm like, someone wrote that? Like that's
Hmm.
insane. But I think when I started to write songs, you're copying things. And I was copying like Guns N' Roses first. And then Nirvana came out, and I am absolutely fully one of those people who was like radicalized by that. Like that band came out, and it was like, oh, that's so much cooler than
Right.
anything around it. And now, of course, with the benefit of 30 years of hindsight, you're like, I'm going to answer your question, I promise, eventually. But you're like, oh, right. Like Kurt Cobain was a misfit and an actual artist and a weirdo who also had like great ambitions towards fame and success and
Hmm.
visibility, who also it's like was a weirdo and was art damaged and was a feminist and an ally in all of these ways and a radical who was also like angelic looking and blue eyes and blonde hair and like there was stuff going for him on how why that band might have been in that position as opposed to other bands. I also happen to think that band wrote fucking incredible songs
Yeah.
and was like undeniable as a live charismatic force. Whether they were good or bad live was immaterial. Some nights it was
Sure.
just like they were bracing, you know. But seeing that and seeing a sticker on his guitar in Circus Magazine, and it said, "Vandalism as beautiful as a rock in a cop's face." My dad was a cop. My
Hmm.
uncles were cops. My cousins were cops. My grandfather, we're Irish Catholic people. You come to this country at some point in like the late 19th, early 20th
Yeah.
century, and it was either like you got handed either like a billy club or a bartender's license, and that was your job, you know, and that's part of the assimilation process.
Sure.
And but I remember thinking like, why would someone want to throw a rock in a cop's face when I was like 12? And
Just dig a
so,
little deeper.
yeah. And so why I bring that up is to say, like, and then like getting incesticide and reading the liner notes to incesticide, where he's like, if
Yeah.
you're a racist, if you hate women, if you're a homophobe, if you're in any of these other kind of like marginalized, brutalized people, if you're one of the people marginalizing and brutalizing them, stop fucking buying our records and don't come to our shows anymore. And we're being like, oh, this is different to like Axl Rose using the N word on a fucking song on an
Yeah.
album. You know what I mean? Like, um, and then also that was the same time as like Sinead and
Hmm.
this person who kind of sounded like Enya, but who you'd see like shaving the Public Enemy logo into her head on the Grammys. You're like, well, what's that logo? Who's that band? What's
The
911
classic
as a joke?
Pope thing.
Yeah, and being the most fucking punk rock person ever in the
Yeah.
history of televised media, getting on Saturday Night Live. So why I say this is between my mom, Dylan, John Lennon in the whatever, that stuff, that kind of expression of that. And then what I started to get into through that sort of punk leaning popular music and what as I was falling in love with my formative and then getting into actual local punk and
Hmm.
hardcore through Nirvana.
Yeah.
Like Nirvana is the gateway to like Pavement and Sonic Youth and Superchunk
Sure.
and
Totally.
Helium, but they were also the gateway to like Fugazi and Minor Threat and so then finding those kids in Staten Island putting on shows in VFW halls. It's more like I think what's happened from very early was that I identified for myself that we don't exist in disconnection from all these things, but rather as a part of. And if the project for me is writing songs about what it's like to be a person, and that is as close as I can get to what the project is for me,
Hmm.
um, how do you do that at
Sure.
23 and not write about Iraq and Afghanistan and lies about it with WMDs and then all the way through to the present moment? It's not,
Hmm.
but what I will say, and then I can stop, is the minute I sit down and go like, I'm going to write a political song, it sucks, it's
Sure.
disingenuous, and
Yeah.
it's the same, it has to come from the same place as any other song about any other thing does, if that makes sense. And the very
Totally.
last button I'll say about what you said about yeah, I'm not famous. I'm not even like indie rock. I'm not like Sufjan Stevens or something. I have like a niche public facing figure, right? Um, and but there are even people in my career who I've like gotten up and played a show and you play one of those songs and they've been enjoying you. And this has happened as recently as a couple months ago. And you play one of those songs and people are like, oh, fuck this guy forever, which says more to me about the listener and the
Hmm.
context in which we make and consume things. Because as you said, I would say in my body of work, maybe 10% of the songs are explicitly about social issues. They're threaded through, but 10% might like tell you what it is.
Sure.
And to me, it's like, yeah, I've always just felt a little bit more like, well, if you lose those people, there are millions of other bands they can listen to who will never
Yeah.
mention any of it. And that's fine.
And that happens whether you play music or not. That happens in
Correct.
daily life.
Correct.
So, and it's really you mentioned that the sticker on the Kurt Cobain guitar, and that you it's really is clear that there is such a closer link between punk rock and folk music, because
Totally.
Bob Dylan has the "This Machine Kills Fascists" sticker, and you have like Bob Dylan and Kurt Cobain are not that different. And I also feel like between folk and punk, like you do sit in both lanes a little bit. You do have folk music, but you do have like heavier full band stuff too. So I think that lineage makes total sense to me.
Well, to me, I agree with you. And to me, I would even throw, even though it's aesthetically different, like versions of hip hop in there too. And what
Yeah.
I think about those three things is that they're ultimately music that came from like working class people to a
Yeah.
degree.
And they're not meant to be perfect.
No, they're not meant to be perfect, and they're also like meant to speak. I think you can make the argument that punk is the op. There's people who think punk is like the Sex Pistols fucking
Hmm.
spitting it. But Sex Pistols wore at least they even sang about like anarchy in the UK and the Queen and whatever else.
Yeah, sure.
But I feel like when I think of punk, I think of not the music, but the spirit. To me, it's yeah, like it's truth to power, which is
Yeah.
also what I think the best parts of hip hop are, which is also what I think like it's funny that Woody like that song. This land is your land.
Yeah.
Like to even speak critically about it is insane because it sounds like you're trying to talk about like the national anthem or something, which I wish it was the national anthem.
True.
But he says there's a verse in that song where he says like more or less like as he's moving around, because one of those songs like "You Are My Sunshine," where like we know the main part, but no one knows like the rest of the words.
Mm-hmm.
There's like five
Mm-hmm.
verses, and
Yeah.
there's one of the verses he talks about like coming up on a big wall that says private property. Tried to stop me. There was a sign was painted private property, but on the back of the sign, it didn't say nothing. This land was made for you and me. Like that shit gives me chills.
Genius.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and like hearing it, and it's yeah, it is genius, but it was a guy right, I was like a virtually a hobo on
Mm-hmm.
trains writing that shit like as a stowaway in that's people music. And
Yeah.
I think that punk and hip hop and folk, those are all I mean they become a lot of other things and people get into arguments about what it is meant to mean, but that's what it means to me.
For sure. That's great. Um, yeah, I love that. And I guess in as times are constantly chaotic,
Hmm.
we do got to find those joys. And for me, and I'm assuming you, one of those is basketball. That's my attempt at a segue.
Listen, that's a people sport. All you need is that round ball. You just got to inflate it.
Exactly.
You could go play it on any blacktop playground anywhere in the whole world. Not even. You
100%.
could fucking hang up a milk crate
Yeah.
somewhere and
People have done it for decades. Yeah.
that's right. Yes, yes, yes. No, I love
Um,
yes, big fan. Big fan.
so I mean, you're a Knicks fan, grew up a Knicks fan. What
That is true.
And before we talk about like this current, well, previous playoff series, unfortunately,
Yeah. We
I'm
don't have a coach
curious.
right now, which is cool.
I know, right?
Oh.
We definitely have to talk about that, but uh, I'm curious, what's like your first like Knicks memory, or even just basketball memory? But
I remember I was in Little League the year that I remember a Knicks pennant with like the logo that was the logo before the logo that they've kind
it's
of
kind
like
of bubbly, right?
it's a little softer and
Yeah.
rounder, yeah. And it was like a felt pennant, and I think my brother John had it up in our room
Hmm.
in our apartment. Um, I
Do you
should
know
say
Pale
like
Hound?
I know that. Yeah,
They
I know
have a
the band.
shirt
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that's
Oh,
like
that's
that logo.
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I've never seen that. That's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember seeing that, and I know, like when I was my earliest sports memories are Mets memories.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I was like hoodwinked by the Mets and the Knicks as a child and as a teenager, because when I grew up. I was 7 when the Mets won the World Series. So I'm now
Mm.
fucked forever because I thought like that's just gonna be how it is. And like you had Darryl Strawberry, Dwight Gooden, Keith Hernandez, Gary Carter. This team was like the Avengers to me. They
Yeah.
were like
Right.
superheroes. Like
They were
I
great.
really thought they were, but I really thought they might as well have been like the
Hmm.
X-Men or, whatever. And then of course that was like a team that should have been a dynasty that won one World
Of course.
Series. Um, that was my earliest orange and blue New York memory was like Mets stuff for sure. Like my dad waking me up after that like game 6 but through the legs with Buckner thing and being like, oh my God, like waking
Yeah.
me up. But with the Knicks, I remember I was in Little League and it was right before they got really good because
Mhm.
they had that whole thing where they had Bernard King, and Bernard King was like, uh, like flirting with top 5 to 10 players in the league
Sure.
level ability. And then
Yeah.
he had a
Yeah.
drug thing, I think, and an injury thing. And then they get Ewing, but they never really get King and Ewing at their
Yeah.
peak at the same time. So that could have been a different thing, but that doesn't happen. And I remember being aware of Ewing and being aware of Mark Jackson, like his funny jump
Okay.
shot.
Uh-huh.
And I remember I can see those guys. And then I remember that they had a guy called Kenny Skywalker who was in the dunk
Mm-hmm.
competition, and that would have been like late 80s.
Sickest hair.
Yes, like yeah, like the kid and play kind of
Yeah.
yeah. And then I remember my brother coming to they made the playoffs one year and let's say they were like 38 and 44. They were like a 7 or 8 seed. It was right before they got really good, so it would have been 89 or 90
Mm-hmm.
and maybe 90. And it's that best of 5 first round series. And my brother came to my game and he was like, the Knicks beat the Celtics.
Ah.
And they won in the 5th game in Boston Garden.
Uh-huh.
and it was Ewing hit a desperation bank three to win the game. He
And
was like
Ewing
not.
doing that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I remember it was like crazy that they like were, and then they really started to like the early 90s I got like all in, through that I was prime time for like Lakers versus Celtics or whatever that Sega
Yeah,
game would have
sure.
been. And then those Ewing Starks, Oakley. First, it was like Xavier McDaniel, and then it became like Anthony Mason,
Hmm.
all that 91 to like 90, actually the like 2000, that was like prime as that team changed around Ewing in
Yeah.
that decade.
You
I
start to
was
get like Allen Houston and
yeah,
yeah,
I was fully like way in because the Mets started to suck at some point, and
sure.
I was still a fan. But I think the Knicks were like, again, you had a decade where the Knicks were in the playoffs every year, deep in the playoffs most years.
Hmm.
So, and I mean, I know where I remember where I was for so many of those games and moments, like the fucking Ewing finger roll where they lost the Pacers. The Ewing putback dunk where they beat the Pacers. I
Yeah,
remember where I
yeah.
was when Reggie scored 8 points in fucking 18 seconds. I remember exactly where I was when they lost to the Rockets in game seven. I
Hmm.
remember where I was for the LJ 4 point shot. I remember where I was when fucking PJ Brown flipped Charlie Ward and all of them got suspended the year that I still think they might have been able to beat that Bulls team to go when they had like Childs and Houston and LJ and Starks as the sixth man and all that kind
Hmm.
of stuff. Anyway, yes, my
You are a
Knicks.
true Knicks
I'm
fan.
a true
Yes.
Knicks fan, dude. I was at the fucking preseason game in 2004 when they got Antonio McDyess to pair with Marbury from the Nuggets, and he was like a 20 and 10 guy, and he broke
Hmm.
his knee at the preseason game I was at. He like went up for a rebound, came down, and he screamed "fuck," and everyone in the arena, and then he never played. I don't think he ever played. He
Brutal.
might have never played for the Knicks, or he might have come
Yeah.
back like for anyway. Yes, my Knicks. I am a big fan for better and for worse. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you've been through a lot.
I have
So
been through a lot. Thank you. I appreciate it.
so who I guess who was your favorite player?
That's very easy. John Starks.
Yeah. Dude had
John
attitude.
Starks to me
Dude was
represents,
kind of
dude,
punk rock, to be
that's what I was
honest.
gonna say. He's dude. So my favorite Met on the 86 Mets was Wally Backman. He was
Oh,
the second baseman,
you weren't a
platoon.
Hojo guy?
No, Hojo was at 86. He was a bench
Yeah, I know.
guy. He was the guy that fucking made them. They traded Ray Knight to make room for him. I
Uh-huh.
was like, I don't care if Hojo hits 800 home runs as a Met. Give me Ray Knight back. But it was Backman and Tim Tuffle were the two second
Okay.
basemen. Backman was that like his uniform was always completely filthy by the second inning of every game.
Yeah.
He was like the drag bunt, beat it down the
Hmm.
first baseline. He couldn't, had no power. He was like a punch and Judy hitter, but he was like, and diving for every ball. And Starks to me, this is a guy that was bagging groceries.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then it's like the Greek level of tragedy that is that this is the guy who plays above his head for his whole career. He's an
Hmm.
all-star at least once, sixth man of the league at least once. There were years where he was clearly the second best scoring option on that team.
Yeah.
That's the guy that goes 2 for 18 in game seven of a fucking finals. And like Pat Riley never goes away from him.
Right.
If three of those shots go in, they win that game. If you know what I mean. And
Hmm.
that's like to me, this guy would like kneel and kiss the Knicks logo ever at the beginning of every game. This guy was like, yeah, I mean, who doesn't relate to like this annoying person in your community, like when he headbutted Reggie Miller.
Yeah, he
Like,
talked a lot of shit too.
yeah, he was like a raw nerve. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
he was emotional and
Yeah.
also in a way that was so endearing. And like they were like a lunch pail
Sure.
team is how it felt. So I think you're onto something though, like John Starks, Wally Backman, underdogs,
Totally.
underdogs. And I think I could say the same thing about Kurt Cobain, Elliott Smith.
Yeah.
These were
Yeah.
like guys that you were like rooting for.
This is the indie rock, right?
That's
This
what
is
I'm
what we root
saying.
for.
John Starks and Wally Backman are indie rock athletes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Um, what about you? Did you play growing up? You said you were at Little League when you found out about the game.
I played like CYO League,
Okay, yeah,
Christian Youth Organization, and I played like I never played first school. I wasn't,
sure.
yeah, I mean, I'm like
Yeah,
competent-ish. I can like make a jump shot. I can like,
I'm
I
right there
could
with you.
I could execute an inbounds pass
It's why
and an
we didn't
ent
play.
that's right. Get an entry pass into the post.
Yeah.
I was probably a bit of a chucker in street games. I liked to
Hmm.
shoot. Um, but no, I think I stopped playing in eighth grade or
Sure.
freshman year, both sports, baseball too. But I got way deeper into playing baseball. I think basketball was a bit
I
more
think
like here and
you
there.
you and I were on the exact same track, I believe. I played baseball maybe two more years. I played like into my sophomore year.
That's
Um,
that's exactly the same, actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then
Where were you? Where are you?
I'm in Chicago. I grew up
That's
in
what I
the burbs of Chicago. Yeah,
So you were out there then as well.
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I bet it was in some ways pretty. I've always felt sh Chicago, it's not identifiable to a New York person, especially
No,
like
yeah,
I didn't grow up in like Manhattan.
yeah,
Like Bay Ridge in a weird way, there are parts of Chicago. Bay Ridge is a bit more
totally.
residential, a bit more, it's like
Pretty like
Southwest
Italian
Brooklyn.
neighborhood, right?
It's moved around. When I was a
Yeah.
kid, I mean, it was Norwegian
Ah,
actually, like at one point, which still there still is a Norwegian Day parade here, but
yeah.
there's like a Leif Erikson Park and whatever. But there was, and then it was Irish and Italian for sure, working class,
Hmm.
sprinklings of Chinese community, sprinklings of like Jewish diaspora at
Sure.
various points. Like when I was growing up going to public school here, there was definitely like a range. And then like Sunset Park is more like primary Spanish speaking, mostly
Hmm.
Puerto Rican. And then like there's a Chinatown, like the second or third largest in New York City that's
Yeah,
like close to here. And then there's like Borough Park not too far, which is like pretty Orthodox
sure,
Jewish community. But now my neighborhood's a lot more like Fifth Avenue in particular. It's like pretty heavy like Yemeni and Palestinian
sure.
groups. So it's kind of an awesome mix of a bunch of different shit
Hmm.
and definitely still those like Italian and but the
Yeah, yeah.
Italian thing now is a bit more like South Shore, Staten Island,
Sure. Yeah.
Bensonhurst, but
Uh-huh.
there's some in Bay Ridge too. Yeah.
I lived in Brooklyn for 4 years.
Oh, so
So
sorry, I'm like
I
rambling about it.
no, you're
Yeah.
good. I lived in Park Slope
I was
for a
there
little bit.
as well for a little while.
Yeah.
Where were you?
In between it was 2017 to 2021.
Mhm.
I was right by Barclays. I was at Fifth and Park.
Oh, you were like in the deep
Yeah.
deep
Not
Park
South Slope.
Slope.
I was Park Slope.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you were proper.
Yeah.
I was on 15th and 6th from 2008 to 14.
Hmm. Yeah, I had
Yeah.
some friends who lived up more like 10th and 12th and 7th and stuff like that. Yeah.
It's great. It's great. So
I love
yeah.
Brooklyn. Yeah, I miss it a lot, but I love Chicago very much.
Yeah, you're in a good place. Yeah.
Um, cool. So let's talk this the Knicks currently.
Right,
Did you?
currently,
I
like
mean,
wherever they all are. I
did
saw they
you?
all went to a nightclub the night after they fucking
I
fired
did. They
Tibbs.
like. Oh, really? Was that night?
I don't know if it was that
I
night
saw
or if
they
it was,
celebrated their playoff run.
which is, I guess, all right. I guess
Sure,
that's
why
all
not?
right. I Yeah, I mean, well, listen, where do you want to go with it? I can go anywhere
Did
you want.
did you feel that this playoff run felt different?
Oh, look, I think it's such a sad actually commentary on the way we look at things that it's like this team was like utterly irrelevant
Yeah,
from like 2002, right?
they had a couple
Through
years with Melo that were like
Yeah,
bright
yes,
spots.
agreed. That what really they had unless I'm wrong, I think they had one like 42 and 40
Yeah,
season with Melo where they went and played the Heat or the Celtics in the first
right.
round and got knocked out.
I feel like
And
no one
then
expected anything out of those playoff series.
yes, and then they had the one year where they had it was like the greatest hits of like all these guys
Yeah.
about to retire, like Sheed and Kidd
Hmm.
and then they mixed that up with Melo and J.R. Smith and Tyson Chandler and Raymond Felton and that team was fun and that team
Shumpert, yeah.
Iman Shumpert, and that team was what's the 3-point dude? Steve Novak, I think his
Yeah.
name was. He used to do the
Uh,
title belt thing when he hit a three.
Prigioni, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Pablo Prigioni. Uh, they were, but that this I will say I feel like it's been really cool to watch, which is why it's a little jarring what's happening right now with the Tibbs thing. They really did seem to like become competent again, like from a top-down ownership. Not well,
Hmm.
ownership, he's such a fucking wild
Right,
card.
of
And
course.
actually, I think he's less. I actively think he's like dog shit, but he's such a his erraticisms, like it seemed like he kind of got out of his own way for a little while and let
Yeah,
like
right.
basketball people run basketball. He did in the interim manage to like alienate one of our five most beloved all-time players with Charles Oakley. It's like you can't come here anymore. It's like,
Uh-huh.
dude, come on. Like Oakley and Starks are the only jerseys I've ever owned.
Yeah.
Was those two
Which,
dudes.
which says a lot, man.
I know. But so I think this is the most fun I had with the Knicks team since that fucking Sprewell, Camby,
Hmm.
Houston, what that eighth seed lockout season where they like
Sure.
beat the Heat, the Hawks, and the Pacers and got to the finals against the Spurs. Like that team was so fun because you just were like they just you felt like they were like figuring out who they were a game at a time.
Right.
And yeah, that was like I very memorable, like watching those games. And even when they got to the Spurs, like you kind of didn't really expect them to do much against the Spurs, but you were just stoked that they got there. This
Sure.
felt like, I think when they beat the Celtics, when they won the first game against the Celtics, because honestly, they weren't super impressive in the Detroit series.
Hmm.
I felt like all year, I felt like last year's team after the Anunoby trade, they were more, I thought, consistently impressive than like with the just whatever combination they had with the grit with DiVincenzo and Hartenstein and even with
Hartenstein was a great piece.
yeah, and like Randall being hurt, but like what that let happen with Brunson and his
Hmm.
development. I really believe who cares because sports happens as sports
Yeah.
happens. But if it could be relitigated, if they were able to, if either Randall was able to come back and be like semi-healthy and semi-useful for that playoff run, or if they just had like one or two more playable dudes
Hmm.
last year in the playoffs because everyone got hurt
Yeah.
to a degree that was like comical by that seventh game against Indiana. They had like four people they could play. Um, I think they get out of that series. And I would have been curious to see what that looked like in
Sure.
the final. Um, this year, it's funny, all year, it was like even though they won 51 games, you just kind of felt like they just didn't, for all of that talent, the top line talent they had, it just never felt like there was no momentum. It never felt
Hmm.
like they like had a run where you're like, oh shit, like the Knicks look great. It was always like choppy, but they were winning more than they were losing. And I thought after the Detroit series, I guess everybody thought like they were just going to get smoked in that
Yeah.
Celtics series because they got smoked all year by them. And it's funny, they won the first game and it was like, holy shit, that's crazy. But then you're a little bit like, maybe that's as good as it's going to get. I was putting my daughter to sleep and she was falling asleep and I was watching silently on my phone on like Max game two because I was looking at the ESPN just when they tell you the score,
Sure.
like updating the score. And it went from like they were down 20 to they were down 12 to they were down four to they were like going back and forth in the last
Hmm.
minute. And I was like, I gotta watch the end of this. I can't like I gotta be silent. And when like the second game, the second Bridges play, I think he blocked Tatum in that game,
Hmm.
stole it from Brown in the first game. You're like, they just fucking won both games in Boston. Like
Yeah.
I think when they beat the Celtics, it was one of those things where you got the sense that this team's entire point from a construction perspective was to beat the Celtics.
Yeah.
And then
100%.
no one thought they were going to. And then they did. And the last game after Tatum got hurt, they won by whatever. They lost that one game in Boston and they beat them at home by like 40 or 38 points or whatever it was. It just had all the makings of like like when Minnesota beat Denver last year,
Yeah.
and it was like that was their finals.
Right.
They beat Jokic. Why am I saying Jokic? They beat
Yeah.
Jokic. They like that. That's who they were built to beat, and they
Yeah.
beat him. And then I think it was like almost like it was like, well, now what? And that Pacers team, whatever you can, I actually think the Knicks should feel better about themselves watching this series because the
Sure.
Pacers are fucking good and
Hmm.
they're relentless and fast and unselfish. And
People
I
doubted
just,
him.
yeah, and I get it because I get why it's
Sure.
their narrative wise, there's not like a flashy. Halliburton's great and Siakam's really good, but not in the way we tend to
Yeah.
like gravitate
Guys like
towards.
Obi Toppin and Nemhard, and like no one expected them to shoot as well as they are.
No, or I mean, and dude, I was on this tour just now with the Wonder Years Philly guys, and
Uh-huh.
I was in Richmond for that first game of that series, and there was two security dudes out in the merch area who were expat New Yorkers and living in Richmond. And we watched the game after the merch out, like everyone buys their shit and then goes, and you're like,
Hmm.
now that's like you're packing everything up. And we watched I mean, it was unbelievable. It was 123, 112, 121, 112 with like a minute 58 to go or something. And you're just like watching, you're like, oh, this is done. And then it just like not we were all just like bugging. I'll never forget where I was for that either. It was like
Yeah, right.
five strangers huddled around a laptop, and these two dudes that were like from Brooklyn. This guy was just like screaming when that ball went up in the air and came back down. And was it Neesmith that hit like six threes in the fourth
It
quarter
was
or whatever it
Smith.
was?
Yep.
Also, just history indicates you don't really come back and win a series very often when you lose a game like that. That's
Right.
kind of an impossible. You have to beat them five times.
But
Um,
what an iconic game. Honestly, it's been a really good playoffs overall.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. And the Pacers are a big part of why the Knicks were a big part of why those Celtics
Hmm.
games were a big part of why I think that what I all of that post-mortem was just to say I do think it's sad. I wish all, and apparently the front office is part of this too. I wish everyone was able to just be like, shit, we got to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in a quarter of a century. Back-to-back 50-win seasons for the first time
Hmm.
since the mid 90s. An iconic like what's the word? Like franchise defining player. We finally have like a guy like that.
Hmm.
And it just is like the minute it's over, it was like I get the Tibbs thing, I guess I get it, but I just also am like, well, what's
I
your
don't really get
plan?
it.
I think it
They
was
don't have
an
a plan, that's for sure.
no, and when I say I get it, I guess you're right. It's not that I get it like it's defensible.
Mm.
I get it like it's predictable.
Yeah.
The rap on him forever is like he can get you there, but he can't get you there. And I think they just were like I think it was like a not a panic move, but like it's the first time in 5 years where it felt like they were like reactionary rather than like patient.
Sure. I think he
Um,
needed another year. Like, and I on top of that, I noticed you haven't mentioned Cat once. Are you a fan of him or no?
I think he's like, I think he's so entertaining, and I think he's
Yeah.
like immensely talented. I think he's really frustrating as a defensive entity
Yeah,
for a guy
definitely.
that size, and I think he's also like, what do they call it? Like basketball IQ. Like the fouls that guy commits are just like there's like no restraint, no
Sure.
self-control. And for a guy to be both like bad at defense and like really handsy and be
Yeah.
like 7'1" or whatever he is, be able to be like, I just think you saw his limitations. It was really nuts to watch. Like you could have those two guys on the floor at the same time and they could score 75
Yeah,
points in a
yeah.
game and they just will give up 85 points in a game. That was like, oh, okay, something got exposed there. Am I a fan of Cat? I I'm not a fan of him, but I don't think you can't really have him be like your true five.
Sure.
I don't
If
think
you
I
had DiVincenzo and Randall back, is it different? Do you think?
without Cat.
Yeah.
I Is that what you mean? I would have loved to have seen that team with a healthy Randall plus Bridges
Hmm.
get a season. I would have,
That
that's what was supposed to
they might have been able
happen.
to take the Pacers there. Yeah,
I wonder. I just would have liked to have been able to see it, but how can you also, it's like, I don't
I
know,
don't know.
both
Yeah,
teams that traded those players got to the fucking conference
true.
finals. So
Randall did play well for the Timberwolves.
Randall was great until
Yeah,
that OKC series, but I also do feel like having had Randall here for 2 years or 3 years, whatever it was. I mean, people shit on him a lot here too, but the
hmm,
guy was like routinely in mid 20s and tens. And
yeah,
also some nights was like there was stretches where Randall was like you'd look at the box score, you'd be like, that guy scored like 40 points 8
yeah.
times this month. He's not good.
Hmm.
Uh it's style, I guess. Like he's kind of a ball stopper, but I don't know.
Sure,
Ideally, it would have been awesome to
I
see
know.
that team with Bridges get one season. Um, and now,
Yeah,
yeah, but no, the Tibbs thing, he's the fucking stereotype. Like Tibbs, Jeff Van Gundy. You
yeah. I'm
love
a
these
Bulls
guys.
fan. I know the Tibbs experience.
Yeah, you do. You do. And I mean, I don't know. He's to me, he's like that. He is like a city, like he's a grit guy too. Like I think he was an easy guy to root for.
Yeah. I
And
think he was actually a really good fit for the Knicks because historically he's butted heads with some of those big superstar guys, and I don't think the Knicks have anyone that are the butt head type of people.
it doesn't seem like it. No. Yeah, I'm really curious. I'm a little worried that next year is going to be one of these like I don't know. They make
Do
an
you have any thoughts on
underwhelming.
who it's going to be?
Not that ever
Yeah.
smarter people than me,
Yeah.
more qualified. It seems it's I didn't think they were going to ask any of those like borderline. Like, why would any of those teams have given them permission to interview those people? I thought that was
I
a
don't
really
know.
funny thing. I wonder if it'll end up just being like some whether it's Malone or Coach
Right.
Bud or the guy who the Taylor, whatever his name is, the guy that got fired by the Grizzlies. I feel like he's in
Okay.
the mix.
I say give Sam Cassell a chance, man.
Where is he at? The Clippers or
He's an
assistant?
assistant coach for the Clippers. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Sam Cassell. I mean, besides the
I
fact
don't
that
know.
Sam Cassell was part of that 94 Rockets team that broke my goddamn heart. But
Sure.
that, no, I think I think someone like that could make sense. I think they're going to have to figure out I think the Rick Brunson thing was a sweet story everybody loved for 2 years. And now it's a little bit like, well, if it ends up being a problem to have the best player's dad
Mhm.
as a what's it called like a remainder hanging Chad from the former
It
administration.
seems like every team has a dad who's prominent. Halliburton's dad and John
That shit
Morant's
was
dad.
crazy. But this guy's like employed by the team. He's like
That's
on the
true.
bench.
That's true.
I
And a
feel like
former
that
player.
the Halliburton thing with his dad, I really was like, what a credit to the composure of Giannis
Yeah.
because there are people that would have just that guy could have died. Like that, Giannis is a 7'1", 280
Yeah.
pound like god. You're running at that guy and like waving your kid's towel. Like what if somebody else with less composure, that's the minute you've just been eliminated from the playoffs for
It's
the
it's
year.
it's like, like the little kid at the zoo who's like banging on the window. It's like
Not a
be
good
careful,
idea.
man.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. No, I have no idea who they're going to hire, but I just
I
think
don't
I
know.
also, in a weird way now, I'm sort of like, well, I don't know. Make sure you turn over every
Yeah.
stone because
Yeah,
it's an important hire. I don't
for
know.
sure.
They're not bringing. I think that he set a pretty high bar
Yeah.
and his limitations are there, but I don't know. Fuck,
Well,
I'm not
you got
sure.
the team there. So, and I think you need maybe a role player that was like a Hartenstein or something like that. But I think you guys are close for sure.
There's a there. I want to see Bridges. I want to see what
Yeah.
Bridges can do next year because I think he's. I think there's more to him than what
Hmm.
he was able to do this year. Some
Yeah.
combination of role and performance. Like I
Right.
think there's a little of him and then a
He had
little
the
of
weird
what
shot thing at the beginning of the season where he
which was
like couldn't figure out a
strange.
shot.
Yeah, and then I also feel like he is somebody who might benefit from having the ball a little more, and that's a little
Yeah.
hard in the Brunson-centric system. I love OG. I
Yeah.
think he's awesome. I would like to see him be able to like do a little more sometimes too.
Hmm.
It was funny. There was that stretch where Brunson's been amazing for New York and for this
Sure.
team. So I'm not, but it was that stretch where he was hurt for a little while late in the year, and they all kind of like all those wings were like doing more. I was kind of
Hmm.
like, oh, that's gonna be good for them in the playoffs because
Yeah.
like suddenly on Anunoby's like there was games where he's like playing like Tatum or so, like 30 something points and 10
Sure.
rebounds. I was like, oh shit. Anyway, I do agree depth is an
Yeah.
issue for them. And it's also hard to know what rotations to play when there's no coach. So
Hmm. Yep.
hopefully they address those two things.
Yeah. Yeah. We can figure it out. The last thing I'd love to do is we play a little game called Build a Band.
Oh, right. Yes,
Um,
yes, yes.
so I'd love to hear if you have a take on building a band out of NBA players,
Oh,
sign them
building a
instruments.
band out of NBA players. In my
Yes.
brain, I just thought I was building a team out of indie rock people.
Which
Okay.
is also fun.
Building a band out of NBA players.
Yeah, what's
Okay.
what's their sound gonna be, Like what's who's playing what?
I think you want somebody like somebody who's kind of like a bull as your drummer. Like I want it
Hmm.
to be a rock band. I want it to be like a loud rock band. I think of somebody with an engine and somebody who is like, yeah, like I like imagine like Giannis as your drummer,
Hmm.
like breaking everything, every
A lot of
show.
Tom action.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Lots of just like
Yeah.
devastating. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we'll go with that. I think you want I think actually like someone like KD or Mikal Bridges is a good bass player, kind of like
Yeah.
long,
Hmm.
sinewy, ropey. Let's go Bridges. We'll give it to the hometown kid, and then the Brooklyn Nets do not count. I'm sorry,
That's
that's a New
fair. That's
Jersey
fine.
franchise forever and
Yeah.
ever. That's all right. I got no. Oh, is it going to shut us off? I realize I've been talking for so
No,
long.
you're
Is it
good.
okay? Okay. All right. So we got a bassist, we got a drummer. I guess we want to we want a brainy. You want somebody who's thinking out there to be I want your keyboardist to be like a brainy guy that can bring in some musical
Ooh.
theory. And I think who is a really trying to think who's a good brainy court floor orchestrator. We've kind of run out of like maybe
I
Chris
mean, if you're
Paul.
I
Maybe
was, I was
Chris
gonna say, if you're
Paul.
thinking like who's like a nerdy NBA dude, I think Chris Paul works. Halliburton's kind of nerdy too.
Yeah, but well, let's get Halliburton because he's also got a little bit. He's like a little
Yeah.
gangly and funny.
Uh-huh.
Let's keep it more current. We'll put Halliburton behind the keys. He can kind of orchestrate. Um, for our guitarist, you want somebody. I mean, I'm not really a virtuoso guitar guy. I'm more of a like feel guitar guy,
Sure.
and a sort of like sometimes like inspired. Like one of the things I've always loved about people like Neil Young, who has so much great music and so much terrible music, but is that Neil Young's acoustic guitar and electric guitar only sound like Neil Young is playing
Yeah.
them. And they also both sound like his voice. It's
Yeah.
crazy. He's like
Yeah.
made a thing where, so all right, I want someone like that. Is a little like like almost like there's again, I'm prizing this kind of like sharp, erratic, like that kind of shit out there. Um, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to keep it current too. Who would be with a little bit of flash? Yo, like a healthy Ja Morant. That's what I want. I want
Ooh,
like a
yeah, yeah,
healthy
yeah.
Ja Morant as my
On
as my
guitar.
guitarist.
Okay.
Like these inspired bursts of yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Um, and then we gotta have a front man, and it's gotta be somebody with some attitude and somebody who's not going to be afraid to speak truth to power. I think it's got to be Ant. I think Ant's got to be the front man because like he's the best interview
Uh-huh.
presently in the NBA. He's like the
Totally.
only one who fully just says whatever the fuck he
I mean, I
thinks.
love all his Adidas commercials. It's
Very
like it
funny.
feels so throwback to like those like 90s like Spike Lee commercials and stuff like
Yes,
that.
totally. Totally. And then I think I would say our like Swiss Army knife that can come in and like spell
Sure.
everybody with
Uh-huh.
energy, enthusiasm, smarts. I hate him, but it's got to be TJ McConnell. I mean, watching every time that guy comes in any Knicks game, because people don't fucking remember last year. I
Hmm.
watched Game 7 on tour with Motherfolk from Cincinnati. I was getting ready to go to the show and I was in a hotel. I watched Game 7, three-quarters of it, and I was just like, this team is so annoying.
Oh yeah.
They're so annoying. Um, but you have to hand it over to them. And
Yeah.
I
He's
certainly,
still proving his annoyingness in this series right now.
but also it is, I have to say, watching this series, I'm like kind of rooting for them because I'm just
Interesting.
like, because it's crazy that
Yeah.
they do is they're sort of flying in the face of so much of what is conventionally, I guess to an extent, OKC is too. They're not a good three-point shooting team,
Hmm.
and to be winning in the mid-range and defense is kind of an amazing thing in 2025. But
Yes.
there's something about it's like orchestrated chaos what the Pacers do in a way that's
Hmm.
just like I hated. You could just see the Knicks every game. They could not withstand it. It was like
Yeah.
watching a satellite come back into like the Earth's orbit and it's like burning up and
Uh-huh.
shit's flying everywhere. Like watching Cat try to switch,
Yeah,
watching
totally.
just falling down. I was like, someone's gonna break their fucking leg. Like they're
Yeah.
just, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, let's go with that band. I won't overthink it. That's
What's
my.
what's the sound? You got because you got some, is it synth or is it keys that
I want
Halliburton's
some
on?
synth in there. I want some keys in there. Yeah, for like texture and maybe sometimes for like maybe some sharp kind of soundscaping kind of stuff. But if he needs to throw in some interesting chords, they're there for
Sure.
him.
But
You
it's a
know,
little heavier, you said.
I think it's like Giannis is beating the shit out of the drums. But then I think we've got this rhythm section that like Giannis is brutal, but I think the bass bridges is a little bit more like
Uh-huh.
they're like developing something that's like maybe like a really heavy but almost groove oriented thing.
Hmm.
And then yeah, like jazz, like it's like the guitar solos on like A Ghost Is Born by Wilco, like that kind of shit. And then yeah, maybe like that's Halliburton's world is there's these kind of herky jerky and then
Some
sometimes
scapes, yeah.
yeah, and then he's thrown in some weird like 11th chords here and there. And then yeah, I think it's like Ant is just maybe it's like Ant's like the Death Grips dude who's just like in the front, just like really
I
brings
want to hear this band really bad.
this is your purview. Get it together, dude. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's awesome, dude. Well, thanks so much for coming on, man. It's been real fun talking hoops.
Thanks for letting me. Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for your again, thank you for your patience and stick-to-itiveness.
Not a
Tenacity,
problem.
tenacious D. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with your next season.
Well, yeah, fingers crossed. And the next time I'm in Chicago, come say hello. I'll send you a,
Absolutely.
yeah. I would love that. I should have thought of that. I was there like 2 weeks, 3 weeks
All
ago
good.
at
And
the
if
Thalia Hall.
next time you're in Chicago too, if we do half court sessions, if you ever want to do one of those too.
What do you mean by what is that?
It's like tiny desk, but we play on basketball courts.
Do you really do that? I would love to
Absolutely.
do that. The next time I'm there, I'll fully let you know.
Let's do
Yeah.
it, man.
All right,
All right.
Matt. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on,
The
man. I'll catch you
pleasure.
later.
Have a good night.